Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle. Above me here on the screen is Joe Clark. And just when the Steelers were backed into a corner, everybody had checked out on them as a team that could accomplish basically anything this season. They managed to beat the Baltimore Ravens. Not only beat them, but beat them on the road. An impressive win, no matter which way you look at it. With everything on the line, basically a playoff game. And so we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to dive into the order of the show will be a little bit different than normal because there's some big breaking news that just happened with TJ Watt. So we're going to talk about some of the injury situation on the team at the moment because there is plenty to talk about there. And then we will dive into the Ravens recap from last week and, of course, previewing the Dolphins game coming up on Monday night. Just a reminder, if anyone wants to ask a question on a future episode, 412-254-3145 is the number to call or text. Just leave us a brief question and your name, where you're from, and we will answer that on a future episode. Joe, before we dive in, how's everything on your end?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Yeah, I can't complain. It's down to much like on Monday night when the Steelers are playing in 15-degree weather. It's kind of getting down that low here as well. So, yeah, it's getting cold. We haven't had snow yet. Have you guys?
Nothing significant. We've had some flurries. Saturday was probably the closest we got. We had like an inch or so on Saturday. But nothing that's really stuck so far.
That Steelers game won't have weather. It'll just be cold. I think it's supposed to just be cloudy or whatever. And we'll talk about why that matters playing against the Dolphins because that's a team that doesn't play all that well in cold weather, specifically Tua. But anyway, we're going to dive into the injury stuff first, as promised. And the breaking news that just came out, I don't know, I guess that was less than an hour ago at this point. TJ Watt, star outside linebacker of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was hospitalized with a lung issue. This was put out by Steelers PR rep Burt Lawton on Twitter. Basically just said he experienced some discomfort on Wednesday at the team facility and is at the hospital getting evaluated. And right now his status rather, is in question for Monday. And so a little bit of scary news there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, anytime you see a lung issue, it's not great, obviously. I mean, it's not like, he tweaked his knee or his ankle or whatever. It could be obviously a further health issue. But there's not much to go on. I mean, Adam Schefter said that the injury occurred during treatment, so who knows? I mean, that's super vague. Who knows whether that means he started to like feel some pain and this team took care of it, or if it's like a Terod Taylor situation where the needle missed its spot and something got punctured, and that makes it obviously a much more severe and much more scary situation. But we don't know. I mean, the team update was as it should be, pretty vague. And Schefter's report didn't really add a lot to it, just that it was during treatment and he was at the facility yesterday. The Steelers didn't practice. So you would think that it was either him working out on his own or getting some sort of medical treatment. So yeah, hopefully everything is good there. I mean, I think football's kind of secondary when it comes to something like this. So just hoping that everything winds up okay with Watt.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, not much info to go off of. However, I did look up some other situations with lungs from other players in the league. Again, we don't know exactly what this is, so it's hard to compare it to anything. But as you said with Tyrod Taylor, he ended up missing about a month. It took him 4 weeks to get cleared to return to football activities there. And so obviously that would be not ideal. The Steelers only have 4 regular season games remaining and, certainly aren't guaranteed to make the playoffs at this point. And so, is there a situation where Watt could effectively miss the rest of the season? I suppose that is possible, depending on the severity of that issue. On the other hand, if it was a bruise, which, you think about, I guess Schefter's report kind of potentially rules certain things out just because, you kind of think, okay, well, it was a delayed onset of the injury because he wasn't feeling anything until Wednesday. And then all of a sudden Wednesday, he's feeling discomfort. Schefter, may have confirmed that something happened during treatment. We'll see. But before the Schefter report came out, I was just kind of looking at lung bruises around the league, and I think Justin Jefferson had one last year um, with the Vikings and played 6 days later. He played all but three offensive snaps, and he was like spitting up blood on the sideline with a lung bruise there. And so, if it's just a bruise, then could Watt play Monday? That might be in question since this happened on Wednesday. At this point, that's a pretty quick turnaround. But if it's a bruise, he could certainly be back sooner rather than later for sure. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see with what comes out, more information. I think Mike Tomlin's supposed to talk to the media probably. Maybe he'll give an update after practice today. Sometimes he does in these injury situations. He did for Aaron Rodgers when he had the wrist the first week. So hopefully we'll get an update sooner rather than later. Other injury stuff too, though. I mean, the Steelers were pretty banged up in that Ravens game, and they already had a couple of players missing from action. I think, Kyle Duggar, the safety, defensive tackle Derek Harmon with a knee. Both of them missed the game last week, and I think they're both tracking in a positive direction. They both spoke to the media today and gave positive updates. We'll see how their practice participation looks. I think Mike Tomlin left the door open for both of them at the beginning of the week, and so hopefully getting both of them back would be a big deal. Everyone's seen the stat at this point about the Steelers' run defense with and without Derek Harmon. It's like 96 yards per game when he's in there that they allow, and it's like 191.3 or something like that when he is out of the lineup. Obviously, he's not the only thing causing 100 yards of difference in the run defense, but certainly there's a big enough sample size now to where he is obviously providing some kind of stabilizing force to that defense. And we'll talk about Y.A. Black's performance here in a little bit, but I didn't think it was that great, kind of filling in for Harmon. So what else, Joe? There's some other injury stuff as well. The tackle situation is pretty interesting.
Situation is quite interesting. Dylan Cook became the fourth offensive tackle to play for the Steelers in the last 3 weeks after Andrus Peat left with a concussion. Calvin Anderson missed the game. I think it was a knee injury. And he ended up on IR, so he will miss really the rest of the season. Um, Pete's in concussion protocol. Dylan Cook was pretty good in his 13 snaps. The drive he came in, he entered on a key third down. That was the 31-yard gain to Calvin Austin. Steelers ended up scoring. Um, I personally think I would lean towards giving Cook the start, even if Pete is healthy. They won't do that because Pete's a veteran. He played most of the Ravens game, and he was solid the week prior, but he did struggle a lot in pass protection against the Ravens. And I thought Cook was maybe a little bit of an upgrade. But, I mean, maybe this is kind of the game to see what you have in him, see if he can maybe be a solidifying piece at left tackle. But other than that, Keanu Benton left the game early against the Ravens, only missed a few snaps and came back. And he's got a minor injury. Why Black has a minor injury. Darnell Washington is in concussion protocol. I think Malik Harrison is also in concussion protocol. Both of them left with a concussion and did not return. Brendan Eccles left to get evaluated for a concussion, but did return, so I think he'll be good to go. But yeah, I mean, Steelers Ravens, you got three concussions coming out of it. I mean, that's kind of an old school throwback, what you would expect from the physicality of this rivalry. But hopefully, those guys are okay. Mike Tomlin kind of said, like, yes, we can do a lot of the same stuff we've done with Darnell without him, but at the same time, he said there's a reason why there's weight classes in, combat sports. So there's really not as much they can do if he's not there, in terms of their jumbo package, using him as a blocker. So yes, they can have somebody technically replace him, but having him back will be key. And then obviously, ideally, you're going to get Harmon and Duggar back, especially Harmon to kind of help this reeling run defense. Yeah, I think Black and Benton should be fine. If Harmon plays, we'll probably see a reduced role from Black, kind of, more of what he's played for most of the season. But yeah, so, not outside of Watt, nothing too serious, I think. I don't know if anybody's truly at risk of missing Monday. I mean, concussions, you never know, but they have the extra day with the Monday game for these guys to clear protocol. So I guess we'll kind of see how practice goes today in terms of who practices if they practice and if they appear to be close to returning from protocol. I mean, James Pierre cleared pretty quick when he suffered his concussion against the Bears, so we shall see.
Yeah, that extra day very important for concussion protocol because the protocol goes in stages. You have to do certain activities in successive day or 1, 2, 3 days in a row. You have to kind of progress through the protocol, and so having that extra day is a big deal. So hopefully that allows most, if not all of them, to return for that game. We'll see. The Steelers made some other roster moves there to compensate at tackle because, if Andrews Pete isn't ready to go, that leaves Dylan Cook. And then you only have 7 offensive linemen. You need 8 to take advantage of the extra game day active. You get 48 helmets if you have 8 offensive linemen active on game day instead of 47. And so right now that would be either Stephen Jones or who else is on the practice
Signed
squad?
David Sharp. It could be him. It could be Jack Driscoll.
Yeah, Driscoll. And then they also just signed Doug Nestor, who was with the Steelers for most of last season on the practice squad on their offseason roster, got cut around roster cutdowns, a former teammate of Zach Frazier at West Virginia. And so they now have more options, some veterans, some that have been with the team before. And so they have, at least some more options that they can call on if they need to elevate some of these guys if Pete is unable to go. I'm not exactly sure who they would elevate, to be completely honest with you. Out of that group, I guess Driscoll and Jones are the 2 that have been with the team the longest. However, Sharp, I think, has the most experience, and Nestor was with the team for quite a while. So I think all of them have an argument that could be made. But certainly you're at that point looking for somebody who's able to fill in at tackle in a pinch. And so I don't know which. I know Nestor has played some tackle, Sharp.
I think Driscoll played some tackle in Philly.
Yeah, and I think Jones is more of an interior guy. So I guess that would leave the other 3 as the most likely candidates. But, we'll see. Hopefully we don't have to talk about that because hopefully Pete is back. So, yes, the injury stuff is kind of the Steelers' season is still hanging in the balance as much as the one win last week helped. It's not a done deal by any means in the AFC North, and especially the TJ Watt injury could be very impactful down the stretch here, though the Steelers have great depth at outside linebacker. That is probably the position they're the deepest. So if you're looking for any silver lining, that is it. We're going to dive into the Ravens recap portion of this episode. And the Steelers ended up winning 27-22. They came out hot. The offense immediately had that deep, I think it was 53-yard pass to DK Metcalf. I think it was Arthur Smith today during his coordinator press conference that said something like, come hell or high water, we were going to push the ball down the field today. And I think Aaron Rodgers said something similar. He talked about how good of a week of practice they had and how, DK Metcalf set the tone at practice, and he really wanted to get him a deep ball on that first pass. And so they had every intent of doing that, and they came out and they accomplished that, and it led to a kind of barrage of those types of plays throughout the game. I don't have the number in front of me, but I want to say they had 4 or 5 of those explosive passing plays. Most of them were, thrown that far, maybe a little bit of yak, but only the one, which was the Jalen Warren short catch and long run for a touchdown, was kind of a shorter throw. So finally, the deep passing game came back, and that was one of the big stories of the game. Joe, what else stuck out to you?
I liked the defense bend don't break. In a game like this, that's super crucial in the second half. They held them to a couple of field goals in big spots. I had the turnover on downs on the pass that maybe was going to DeAndre Hopkins, but Mark Andrews got in front of him. It was a good play to break it up anyway. I thought, just in general, the defense kind of stood their ground when they had to. The offense was clicking early. The second half had a string of 3-and-outs, and the defense didn't, let the dam break. So I was pretty happy with their performance. I mean, there's some, Lamar used his legs more than I think we thought he would because he just hadn't done it so as much, especially in recent weeks in this season. But Derrick Henry had a few of his runs, but even though they got outrushed by a lot and they allowed over 200 yards on the ground again, They came through in the key spots that they needed to help them win the game. So good situational football there. I think that's something a positive to take away. And if they can keep holding teams to three instead of seven, which is something they used to be really good at, then the rest of the season could look better than most of the season has so far. I don't think that Y.A. Black had a good game. I actually just wrote an article, Chris Ho kind of criticizing him at nose tackle for getting blown off the ball and not playing his angles. It was evident even on the TV tape that he was continually getting blown back at nose tackle, but he also played, I think he played 16 snaps at nose tackle, and he never played more than six in a game
Mhm.
before that, and he had never played more than two in a game other than like he had played like 1-1-1-2, and then he had like a six, and there's games he hasn't played at all. So he was kind of learning on the fly. But wasn't a good game from him. I think they need to get Derek Harmon back to kind of improve the run defense because I don't think he was that great against Buffalo the week before either against the
Mhm.
run in terms of over pursuing. So that's kind of a continual issue for him. I mean, everybody wants to talk about the calls and the refs. I thought outside of the field goal one, which was a bad call, but ultimately didn't have, a huge impact, I don't think. I'm trying to think back to when that happened. I don't think
Well,
that was.
that was a field goal that turned into a touchdown drive. So
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. You're right. That did have a huge impact.
Our Ravens fans are
I was,
screaming at us right now.
yeah, I was trying to think when that happened. So, all right, yeah, yeah, okay. So, yeah, that did have a big impact. But yeah, the other two I thought were correctly officiated. Um, but you do have a rookie official on Steelers Ravens. I don't know why the NFL expects there not to be any controversy when you put a guy that's been criticized all year for struggling in his first year, and then he goes and calls one of the NFL's most heated rivalries. So that's another issue. But anyway, yeah. I mean, I think it was a good win for the Steelers. They really have to play with consistency now because they got a Dolphins team that looks pretty good coming in, and they can't let their foot off the gas.
For those of you out here that are chronic NFL referee haters, Joe is your spirit animal. Behind the scenes here, Joe is Joe does our weekly ref articles on the site, breaking down kind of the ref tendencies and stuff. And he's developed a tricky relationship with some of these guys. But no, yeah, I agree. It was a weird assignment to put him on the game there, and I guess we got what the NFL got what they paid for there, so to speak. And I don't know. I think I agree that the calls were correct. Do the rules need to change? I mean, this is the age-old debate that's gone on for years and years, and I think they've tweaked the rules slightly. And I guess there's there's slightly less confusion. But you hear Calvin Austin III. I think it was on DVE radio this week with Jerry Dulac. He was talking about, I didn't even know that rule that you have to take a third step in the end zone. And, so I don't think it's like a very commonly known thing. Certainly now it is more commonly known after the big controversy. Will the NFL adjust that? I don't know. I mean, you have to have objective outline for what is a catch in different scenarios regardless. And so if they move the goalpost again, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about what needs to happen there. I think a lot of people were up in arms, and I don't blame them for being up in arms, but it was ruled correctly ultimately. And a lot of people point to the Roman Wilson catch. I think who was that against? Was that the?
I think it was the Packers.
Yeah, you're right. The Packers. It was in garbage time, and I think, and as Roman Wilson pretty much exclusively plays in garbage time, he caught that pass and he took like 4, almost 5 steps. It did look similar because he had his arms outstretched, much like Likely did. But he took, at least 4 and arguably 5 steps on that. And so there really was no comparison whatsoever between those two plays. And then, of course, John Harbaugh's complaining because he says, well, if the Likely thing isn't a catch, then why is the Aaron Rodgers thing a catch that he was ruled down? And I think, the rules, as much as he wants to argue with them, the rules do state that, Rodgers didn't need to make a football move because he was already downed. And so when he caught that and he was tagged down, his knees were already down. That kind of completed the process of the catch. I think Harbaugh's issue was he didn't survive the ground, but I don't think that in that scenario he was really it was a situation where he was by the letter of the law going to the ground. It wasn't like he caught the ball and was like, did he trap it against the ground or whatever. His knees were down when he was touched, and so that's why that was ruled that way. Again, does there need to be a rule change? I don't know, but I think much ado about nothing this week on the rule stuff. That's all anybody wanted to talk about. Even as recently as yesterday, you had Florio, Pro Football Talk, on 93.7 The Fan, complaining about the rules. And man, I almost didn't want to talk about it today, but it's been the talk of the town, so I thought we had to touch on it. But let's. I just brought up Roman Wilson. That was an interesting thing. He didn't get a helmet. Joe, thoughts?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's explanation was that Scotty Miller was a better backup punt returner, and that was kind of all he said about it. That was like that was his statement, is that Scotty Miller is a more capable backup punt returner, which is fair. But it is interesting that Roman Wilson is the guy that they didn't give the helmet to there. I mean, I think he maybe hasn't came on as well as they've liked him to, but I also thought when he's gotten his opportunities lately, he's done well with them. I mean, it's not his fault that quarterbacks are throwing deep balls like 20 feet over his head. So that's kind of an interesting admission. I mean, I guess it's kind of the guy that like you're gonna it's gonna be tougher to find a spot for him if you're also playing Adam Thielen and you're playing MVS. Like you have the deep threat with MVS, then you have more of the slot shifty underneath guy with Thielen. So then it's like kind of where does Roman Wilson fit in? So from that standpoint, it makes sense. But I do think like there's a path that you could have had Roman Wilson active and maybe use him situationally, but especially if, they're, as they said, they're going to go hell or high water, they're going to push the ball down the field. Well, the guy that's gotten open and gotten separation down the field has been Roman Wilson. So yeah, I mean, it's human nature to wonder if there's more to that than the team is letting on, but I definitely think that was an interesting decision.
Yeah, if you're gonna cite punt return stuff, then they should have had Keyshawn Williams active and not Scotty Miller. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. If you're gonna cite that, that's who you would. If that's truly your reasoning, that's who you would have active, in my opinion, just because he's done way more of it for them this year. And it's not like they used Miller on offense. You think he had 3 offensive snaps, 1 on special teams. So yeah, I don't get the decision. I mean, the only thing is there's enough breadcrumbs at this point where Aaron Rodgers kind of said, oh, well, Adam Thielen and Marquez Valdes-Scantling brought a level of professionalism. And then he kind of caught himself, I think, kind of knowing that he was maybe throwing some of the other guys under the bus. And perhaps that is what he thinks, but he did kind of correct himself and say, oh, not that, I love Cal and I love Roman. Kind of felt like he just kind of tagged that on. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with Calvin Austin. Obviously, Roman Wilson's the one that didn't get the helmet. And so is that a kind of a jab at Wilson? I think it's fair to wonder that, and that very well may be the case. I think, the week prior to that, you had Rodgers talking about receivers missing their hand signals. And he said something about showing up to film sessions, which I think got kind of misconstrued in certain ways, but maybe there's something there. Maybe it's at times not the required job duties of showing up to meetings and stuff that are required. But Rodgers has been hosting kind of after, I guess like night extra film sessions at his house and stuff like that. Those aren't required, but if the offense is struggling, they pretty much should be required at that point. And so maybe Roman wasn't showing up. I don't know. I don't want to throw that out there because, we don't know that stuff. But you kind of read between the lines. Why is somebody like Roman Wilson inactive? I mean, a 3rd-round pick. It's his 2nd year. He missed the 1st year with injury. I guess you can count this kind of as his rookie season. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they wanted to avoid a situation where rookie players were making rookie mistakes at the end of the year, like right now, they're in a situation where they need to win. Do they want to rely on these veteran guys? Potentially that's the case, but the way to avoid that would have been to get Roman Wilson involved earlier in the season, because poor guy barely got any chance to grow or develop during the season. And so now you're at the end of the year, you're in a must-win situation, and you don't feel like you can rely on the guy. That's their own fault for not kind of throwing him out there and letting him grow. There's going to be rookie pains for just about any player. I don't think they really gave him adequate time to make that happen. So I don't know. We're not in that room. We don't know if maybe he isn't good in the classroom. Maybe he's whatever it might be. I don't know. But it is worrisome to me that he isn't getting a helmet at this point. And yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to see what happens this offseason with him. I don't think they would bail on him yet, but man, not a good sign for him to be inactive. We're gonna move into the Dolphins preview portion of this now, and I think the appropriate place to start is the rushing offense of the Dolphins. And we didn't mention this, but the Steelers got outrushed 217-34 in that Ravens game, which is an odd number to have when you're the winning team, having 34 rushing yards compared to the other team having 217. That doesn't happen very often, and so that is going to be something to note against the Dolphins, who are, I believe, leading the league over the last 4 weeks with 192.3 rushing yards per game. Actually, that's over the last 4 games because their bye week fell within that. And then the Steelers, on the other hand, allowing 167.5 per game over the last 4. And if you take just the last 2 against the Bills and Ravens, that's 233 per game, which has got to be a high. I can't imagine anybody else is higher than that over the last 2 games. And so you kind of have the movable object facing the unstoppable force. And so what's going to happen there? I think that is priority number 1 this week.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, the Dolphins have done a good job adding. They've basically broken out a jumbo package like the Steelers have. They've been playing an extra offensive lineman, and that's really helped bolster their run game because their offensive line really isn't like that great. I mean, Cole Strange was cut by the Patriots, ended up on the Browns practice squad. Now he's starting at guard. Jonas Savaiinaea was a second round pick, but he was god awful to start the season. He's gotten a little bit better as the weeks have gone on. But yeah, they've really bolstered that running game. I mean, Devon Achane is a very, very talented running back. He's going to come in a little banged up with a rib injury, but even when he exited last week, Jalen Wright had a really strong performance. They've gotten some decent, goal line work from Ollie Gordon. They have. I mean, they have to pound the run. I do think that the deep passing game is going to be there again this week for the Steelers. I mean, this Dolphins secondary is not very impressive whatsoever. I think the Steelers really have to kind of take advantage and go down the field against them. We'll see if they do. Mike Tomlin, when they kind of asked him, he said, "Well, we knew Baltimore. We're still getting to know Miami." Just, whatever answer, but you should know enough about Miami to know that you should be able to take shots down the field. Hopefully they do. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Tua Tagovailoa's struggles in the cold. So I think really just hammering the run game will be key. If the Steelers can contain Achane, I don't think they're going to be able to, completely stop him, given how well the Dolphins have run the football lately. But limit him a little bit. And I think they should be in good shape. I think this is even with how hot the Dolphins have been, I do think this is a very winnable game on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, this was the team that was down and out pretty much at the trade deadline, and even sold some pieces, and then have gotten things together since they fired GM Chris Greer there. And kind of an odd situation. You don't expect a team to turn things around like that after selling pieces and how bad they already were. And I mean, Tyreek Hill's been injured for most of the season, and it is kind of a miraculous turnaround for them. And I think their head coach is earning himself at least one more year on the job, which I don't know if Dolphins fans are happy about that or not, but he's doing a good job right now, and that's all that matters for the Steelers. They're facing one of the hottest teams in the league at the moment. And I think Minkah Fitzpatrick's an interesting thing in that secondary. The Steelers have avoided the middle of the field in the past, specifically to avoid guys like Jesse Bates, and we know that they think highly of Minkah Fitzpatrick. I don't know if that's changed in recent years since, obviously they traded him. But is this a situation where they avoid the middle of the field? I know he's playing less kind of center fielder in Miami than he had been in Pittsburgh recently. They're kind of moving him kind of in a Jalen Ramsey type of situation where they're moving him into the slot and down into the box, and he's playing all over the place there in their defense. And so it's going to be harder to just avoid one area of the field because Minkah's going to be all over the place. But certainly I think there are opportunities to go deep, and that's what worked last week. The interesting thing last week is that they went deep and it was successful, and it didn't appear to open up much underneath. You could argue, I guess, maybe the Jalen Warren a long catch and run for the touchdown, potentially, because he and Pat Freiermuth were wide open on that play. So I don't know. I think that was just the Ravens kind of missing their assignments. But, you expect the deep passing to kind of open stuff up underneath, whether it's short, middle of the field stuff for tight ends or whether it's, the run game. Obviously, the run game did not get opened up. The Steelers only ran for, 34 yards or whatever in that game. And so hopefully this is the week where they can kind of become more well-rounded. I don't think they're going to just turn into a great deep passing team all of a sudden after being bad at it for most of the year. I don't think that's going to be all of a sudden become their calling card and the thing that they can ride deep into the playoffs. They're going to have to find some kind of balance, and this might be a decent week to do so against this Dolphins team. You mentioned the poor cold weather thing. Let me pull that up here. All right, Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa, 40 degrees or colder. Out of his last, 5 games, all of them were losses when it was 40 degrees or colder. This is going to be the second coldest of those. He played a -4 degrees in Kansas City. Now he's going to play what NWS is calling 15 degrees as of 20 minutes before we started this podcast. I checked. Tua Tagovailoa struggles in the cold, no doubt. And he hasn't been the reason that offense is successful anyways. And so this is a team that's going to be relying on Devon Achane and that perimeter rushing attack heavily. Now, the Bills just were also a perimeter rushing team. And, this is easily could be a situation where they just copycat and say, all right, we're going to run to the perimeter. Hopefully, good luck having your corners tackle us. And so that is the big worry here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I struggle to see this. I mean, as a whole, the Dolphins have really struggled in cold weather. And when you look at it, it's going to be 15 degrees. I do struggle to see Tua and the Dolphins putting up a strong performance. I think the run game really is going to be where they could win.
I agree. Did we have the Dolphins injury report here? I know Achane was kind of listed on it. I don't have it pulled up. I don't think there was anything.
They didn't do a full report yesterday.
Oh, that's right. The coach talked to the media and I think talked about Achane a little bit. I expect him to play. I guess we'll see.
They said he could have returned last week.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm sure they'll have some guys on the report, as most teams do this time of year, but the first report of the week is not out yet, so we don't have that information. Probably by the time most of you are listening, that will be up on SteelersDepot.com, so check back on the site. We're going to do something a little different and not go the listener question route just this week because there is kind of a bonus topic that I thought was worth talking about. So, if whoever sent in questions, I saw that we had a couple. Thank you so much, and we hope you write us back or call us back for next week. But I did want to talk about Joey Porter Sr. on Cam Hayward's Not Just Football podcast and some of the comments he made. I think that was on, was that just yesterday, Wednesday, that he said that stuff. He was talking about some of the former Steelers who have made comments about the team that he doesn't necessarily agree with. And I thought it was interesting. I mean, the article on our site has 203 comments and counting. Everybody seemed to have a pretty strong opinion, like, hey, he's just saying what everybody else is thinking. And some people are saying, yeah, these, ex-Steelers are out of line, kind of criticizing the team. So let's get into Joey Porter Sr.'s comments. And it was a long, 15-minute rant that he had. So it was kind of hard to distill it into one idea. But he gave reverence to, when we were playing, he said the guys in the 70s, you had to deal with their opinions because there was respect there. And, there is always respect for the people that come before you in the Steelers building, especially, right now, the current teams haven't accomplished anything and the past teams have accomplished a lot. And so, there is a level of you have to listen to those guys. But he did bring it up. Quote, "It's been a Steeler culture rule. No matter when we don't like something, what good do us to hear." So, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time reciting in Joey Porter Sr.'s exact phrasing. What good do it do us to tear down another Steeler or another guy that's in our building? It ain't something we preach. It ain't something we did. It ain't something we do. We covered more secrets over 30 years that I've been part of the Steelers than we told. So when they do it, I look at them like, what is that about? He also went on to say, basically that people in the locker room are probably noting that. And what did he say? If they know that that's what they're saying, and when they walk around, y'all expecting a high five, good luck, because you can't crush me and think I'm going to dap you up and give you a hug like you didn't just come for my head. That's over. Of course, he's talking about guys like Ben Roethlisberger calling for Mike Tomlin's job. James Harrison's been very, very vocally negative about the team lately on his podcast. There's a number of other guys. Chris Hoke occasionally says stuff, but I think Hoke goes about it in a better way. It's more like constructive criticism than these guys who are basically calling for Tomlin and other people's job. Joe, your thoughts? Like, what side of the debate do you fall on? Are you okay with the former Steelers putting all that stuff out there, or are you more on the Joey Porter Sr. side of things and wish it was maybe dealt with internally?
Towards the Joey Porter Sr. side of things. I mean, like you said, when somebody like Chris Hogue talks, he's doing it constructively and he's offering, feedback, and he's just telling you what he sees. When James Harrison's spouting off in his podcast that nobody asked for, and none of it's constructive. He's just ranting and going on and on about how bad this guy is and how bad this is. There's really no constructiveness to it. Ryan Clark talks out of both sides of his mouth to whatever will get more of a wider audience on Get Up or whatever, or NFL Live or whatever. Like he can't just stick with a consistent take, because he'll say Mike Tomlin should go. Mike Tomlin needs to get fired. Mike Tomlin needs to have his Andy Reid. And then he's like, it would be so stupid for this team to fire Mike Tomlin. There's
Right.
no chance. You can't talk about, oh, Mike T's the best. And then yeah, because you know what he wants? He wants to get his little sit down with him on the pivot every training camp, and he can't be too negative towards him. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. Ben Roethlisberger just his pod kid. I can't even take him seriously. I mean, it's like oh, like let's eat some deviled eggs and drink a 7% IPA and chumming up about the Steelers. So like a lot of it's just like whatever. Like say what you say. Like you're a lot of like. Clark's obviously saying it because he's paid a lot by ESPN. So like, fine, whatever. Ben Roethlisberger is just talking in his basement. Like I don't think like thinks like anything he says is really well. He wants to stay relevant, but like, I don't know if he's really like thinking through everything he's saying. James Harrison just screaming. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I agree with Porter to an extent. Like what's the point of just speaking out? Like at some point, like, but you have the platform, you can do it. So why not? I mean, sure, do it. But it's just kind of dumb because then, you say all this crap and then, what if this team ends up making, I don't think they're going to, but what if this team, wins out, ends up making a little bit of a run? Then you just look like an idiot and you're going to be fawning over them and you're going to completely, switch sides. So don't say anything that you're not going to just switch up on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people in the comment section were basically saying, oh, well, these guys have every right to say it. And, they're saying what a lot of the fans are thinking. And, the standard hasn't been acceptable. And, I think the guys in the locker room already know that, first of all. They already know that it hasn't been acceptable. I mean, they're not oblivious to the fact that this highest paid defense is performing like, the worst defense in the league at times. I think nobody is excited about the way things have gone this year overall. And I think you've seen that in the locker room. And, even Mike Tomlin himself admitted he agreed when, the fired Mike Tomlin chants were coming down. He said, I don't blame him. So first of all that stuff's already known. So these ex-players that are going on these shows, they know what kind of sway they have with the fan base. They know that what they say, especially if it's overly critical of the team, that's probably the most like radioactive thing they could say that, is going to grab significant headlines. And certainly it has for us, multiple times this season. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it probably is something that should be dealt with internally. I think Joey Porter Sr. even said, it seems like what James Harrison's saying, that it seems like there's something personal that I don't know about. I don't need to know about, but it seems like there's something personal there. Who knows what's going on, but I wish it wasn't so ugly between former players and current players, just because the Steelers have always had a tradition of former players giving back to the team. And it's when you're kind of building up this like negative podcaster vibes among former players to current players, it kind of destroys some of that possibility. And, Cameron Hayward didn't respond during the podcast. I think he just said, like, I don't have any comment, basically. But he was, like, quietly nodding his head as Joey Porter Sr. was saying this stuff. And so the guys in the locker room, they absolutely know what James Harrison and Ben Roethlisberger are saying. They're not going to comment on it because, again, that's just going to feed the beast of the news cycle. But, I think it's just a bad look for the franchise overall. But, they're not employed by the team. They have no you just hope that they're, I guess, have some sort of fondness for the organization still. And I guess some would argue that they're doing this out of fondness. They want to see them return to glory or whatever, but I don't think that's the way to do it. So that's my 2 cents. I think, Joe, it sounds like you mostly agree there. Certainly a lot of you do not and are probably going to have wildly different takes than us on that, and that is fine. Let us know. Ask a question. Again, that's 412-254-3145. Ask a question or just call in and tell us we're wrong, and we will have more of a debate on that. We're happy to do that next week's episode. I think that's all for today. I am Ross. That is Joe, and we will catch you guys next time.